You're listening to 515, the Ultraman podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, co-race director of Ultraman Canada, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. In this episode, you will learn all about my co-race director, how we became friends through Ultraman, some of his other Ultra adventures, and how he brought Ultraman back to Penticton. And a Steve King story. My guest today has competed in multiple 515 distance races. He started at Ultraman Canada in 2012, which is where we first met. He's from Manitoba originally and has swam across Lake Winnipeg. He is such a smart man in business that he has essentially retired on the Freedom 35 plan. He now focuses many hours on training and racing, completing more kilometers in a day than a lot of athletes do in a week. I'm happy to finally get this man on the podcast from his home in the Peach City of Penticton, my friend and co-race director of Ultraman Canada. This is Mr. Brad Sawa. Hello.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, no, welcome. This is great that we finally get the connection of the two of us for this podcast.
Yeah, we get to talk all the time, but not like this.
Exactly. Yes, we're going to share with everybody the insides, the background of what goes on at Ultraman Canada, and we'll actually be having our meeting after this podcast to work on planning for the event this year. So we got a lot of time to spend together today. So we're going to get into a lot of different topics today, including how you became a race director for this race. But let's start off with where you were before Ironman and before Ultraman. What was your life like at that time?
Sure. Before Ironman, I was really into board sports a lot more. Ever since I've been, 12, 13 years old, I got into skateboarding and I just loved it. I was very passionate about it. I built a mini ramp in my backyard, a bit of an obsession. So that was huge. Then when I moved out west to Calgary, I started doing tons of snowboarding. I have had a couple of 100-day seasons in the mountains. It was actually the board sports which got me on the bike. I had an injury one summer. I did some nerve damage in my foot. I went to the bike shop and in hopes of avoiding physiotherapy, I thought I could be my own physiotherapist. And I bought a cyclocross bike. It was a specialized tri-cross. And I remember the first day I had that bike, I whipped out on a back road behind my house. It was around 30, 40 kilometers. And it almost killed me. I think I tipped over on that ride on a bit of an uphill climb. I just wasn't able to spin the crank, and the bike just came to a stop on the uphill, and I wasn't comfortable enough clicking out of my shoes, and I tipped right over. I'm sure that a few cars driving by got a good laugh at me. I've got to say that even though the bike was just supposed to be a tool for recovering from this injury, I quickly started falling in love with the bike itself. I really enjoyed it. This was all happening. The injury was 2008. In 2009, I had already logged a bit of kilometers on the bike, and I was riding it a bit. And a good friend of mine, Evan, who I grew up with, we went to kindergarten together. He was my next door neighbor since I was 2 years old. Played hockey together. He's one of my best friends. He had been living in Vancouver with another of my good friends, Goody, who completed Ultraman Canada in 2019. And these two guys were. They're both corporate lawyers, and they're, busy professionals. And at the time, they were getting into 70.3s. They had done a few, and they threw out the idea to me that we should all do Ironman Canada together. And I was kind of flattered because, they had both had experience running marathons. And like I said, the 70.3s. And I was just a skateboarder guy that, rode a bike to recover from an injury. The mere fact that they thought, I could possibly do an Ironman with them, it piqued my curiosity. So, in 2009, Evan and myself went down to watch the Calgary 70.3. I enjoyed that enough that later on that summer, I found myself hopping in a car and driving out to Penticton to go watch Ironman Canada. And, when I pulled into town, I made my way down to the finish line, and I got there just in time to catch the winner of the overall event cross the finish line. So I was able to see everybody cross the finish line in that year. I stayed, and I was in awe. The pros are so impressive. It's almost like they're not human. When you look at them, you forget that they hurt too. They really are just so inspiring. But it wasn't really seeing all of those fast people finish, sub 10 hours. That's not what really got me hooked. It was later in the night as the sun disappears, the stars are coming out, it's getting dark. And that you see a different type of emotion at the finish line, a different type of finisher. And these people, I thought it could have been my uncle or my auntie, somebody I saw at the grocery store that I wouldn't have looked at and considered an endurance athlete. And these people were doing it. They were finishing it. And when they crossed the finish line, what I saw them, the passion that I saw in their faces, the emotion, the tears, the joy, it was something that I saw, and I had to feel that myself. I wanted to put myself through all of those hours to get to that finish line to feel what they felt. And so that night I ended up camping at Gyro Park, after the last finisher came in, or just after midnight. I had a tent in my car, and because I did hear that Ironman Canada, at the time back then, it would just sell out pretty much on site. So I had my tent there. I set up in Gyro Park. I was the only tent there, at night. I figured, I hope the police don't bug me. And I set my tent up. I went to bed, and I woke up in the morning quite early, and the whole park was filled with tents. There was tons of tents everywhere. They were like a couple feet away from my tent. They were I can't believe I didn't hear it all. And I was just making my way to my car, which was maybe half a block away, to go grab my toothbrush and stuff to clean up. And a volunteer had come out of the main tent, and she said very quietly, I could hardly hear her, but she whispered, "We're starting registration early." So I just jumped at it, and I followed her into the tent. I signed up right away. I must have been one of the first that year to get my name in the hat. I walked out of the tent with a complete mixed bag of emotions, from fear, excitement, joy, just everything. It was a great feeling. And I sent my two best friends, Ryan and Evan, both messages saying, "I'm in, you guys better get in." And they both luckily did get in through the online spots. And, that summer, I really got into it. I really did the training. I didn't want to just do this with my two friends. I really wanted to crush them. I wanted to beat them. And then it was all hugs at the finish line, of course, but I wanted to destroy them. And it didn't turn out that way. Friend Evan, me and him finished together, and it's a memory I'll cherish forever. And, a couple years later, with a bit more training under my belt, I was able to cross the finish line in Coeur d'Alene at 2014 with Ryan, with Goody. That was a special one as well. I've got a big blown up picture of that finish in my office, and it means the world to me. When I look at that and I see our arms around each other at a finish line, and it's just a special thing.
So you started your Ohana in the Ironman race.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of that story, you were talking about how you spent a lot of time skateboarding and snowboarding. And for the people that are watching, they can see that you have quite the skateboard collection. I know you enjoy your art, and especially mixing the two together, your skateboard and your art. For those that will appreciate that, what are some of the things in your collection that really stand out? What are some of the pieces you have?
Back when I really did a lot of skateboarding and got into it in my, when I was 12, 13, 14, I always remembered that feeling I got going into skate shops, and just all the colors, all of the cool skulls and art. And it really had an impact on me. I loved all of it, just the culture of it all. I started buying the older skateboards from the 80s, in the late 90s because they were cheap. They were firewood at the time. Nobody had interest in these things. So people were selling off skids of these. And I was just going online and I had hundreds and hundreds of skateboards, which at the time had no value. I acquired original art from guys that had done the art for the skateboards, and I had their ink drawings, iconic skateboard graphics that I have the original art for. Over the years, I've sold a lot of them off, but I still have over 100 decks, the ones that mean the most to me. And I mean, I don't think I would ever sell them. I would love to keep this collection together and pass it down to my kids someday. So some of my highlights, I think, are the Bones Brigade. I do have a complete set of all, in unused condition, the Tony Hawk, Steve Caballero, Rodney Mullen, Kevin Harris, Canadian from Vancouver. I do have them all, and they're mint condition. And they're tough enough to collect. But I've collected mine all in the exact same color. That's that OCD about the whole thing that I had to get them all matching, which really, I mean, it took me well over a decade to put that set together. So yeah, that's something I have a lot of fun with. It eats a lot of my time up.
And have you got into the non-fungible tokens yet then? I'm guessing with the art, that's going to be the next thing for you to collect.
Yeah, a lot of my friends my artist friends have, given me options and to purchase, they're for the first release and whatever it was. And I haven't yet. I haven't bought any. For all of my investments, whether it's, for business or, for fun, I really like tangible stuff. That's why I do a lot with real estate. And, I can't touch an NFT and I can't hang it on my wall. So I'm not really a tech guy. So I have a tough time fully understanding that. Like, I get it. I could explain it to a 10-year-old, but I don't really get it. I don't know how it's going to make me money in 10 years if I have this, So no NFTs yet, and possibly never.
When you are saying that you're looking at the art and the artistry of all of this, and that's what attracts you to it, that you take that to your own personal level as well, because you're pretty tatted up. You've got you've got a good collection going there. Is that from the same inspiration? Is that the skateboarding days? Is that like, what are some of the pieces you have that tell a story? Yeah.
I mean, my back is covered in tattoos. My entire back, which surprises a lot of people. And I don't really know what that means when they see me with, they know me for years and then they see me with the shirt off and they're like, oh, I never would have guessed you would have that. I've never known how to take that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know how to take that. I don't take it as a compliment or an insult. It's just kind of, I don't know. But all of my tattoos on my back are images from Bones Brigade skateboards. And, I never really put too much thought into the fact that I was covering my bodies in tattoos. I was in my 20s, and my good friend of mine was a really talented tattoo artist in Calgary. And I just had this vision of, I really liked the Powell Ripper, like that famous Powell skull with the big head, and he's kind of looks like he's ripping out. And so I've always thought my first tattoo I got was really tiny. It was like the size of, a 2-inch diameter. And I hated it. I hated this tattoo because you can't get detail in a small tattoo. And people would come up and they'd be like, oh, what is that? And I'd have to explain it, and you'd have to go close to it to look at it. And after a couple of years, all the lines get fuzzy and it just kind of looks like shit. So I decided after my first little tattoo that you can't get small tattoos, that you need big tattoos. And so I went with that. I've always kind of been an all-in kind of guy, and I figured, at the time I was wearing a suit to work. So I didn't want to have anything visible. I wanted stuff that I could throw a suit on and nobody would know it was there. So in the back is a nice big piece of flesh to work with. I smothered that, and I love it. It's I've never had a regret.
With the Iron Man crowd, it seems like everyone that gets a little bit serious about it has the Iron Man tattoo. Are you corporate enough to have the Iron Man tattoo?
I have an M dot. I got an M dot. I told you I did my first Iron Man with Evan and Ryan.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, they're both lawyers. They're both corporate lawyers. Both of my best friends that I went to kindergarten with became corporate lawyers. Evan particularly is a pretty conservative guy. Evan, he's never had a mustache. He's never had a beard. He's never had a tattoo. He's he's quite conservative. And after we did the Iron Man together, a few weeks later, Evan called me up and said, "Hey, I'm thinking maybe of getting an Iron Man tattoo, but I'll only do it if you do." So I had no interest in getting an M dot tattoo. In fact, I hate it. The only reason I have it is because of Evan, and because I love Evan so much. That tattoo is quite special to me. But there are times when I'm at the pool or I'm at an expo and I have it and I'm like, oh man, I wish I didn't. Not for any reason other than I'm quite fussy and it doesn't fit in with any of the other tattoos I have. I don't, it doesn't blend well. So from that point of view, it doesn't make sense, but I'm glad I have it.
Yeah. Well, it has a lot of meaning, so it
has a lot of
sense.
Yeah. I'm very sentimental.
With that, let's talk a little bit about your personal life then for a bit, so the listeners can get to know a little bit more about what goes on in Brad's house when he's not planning an Ultraman race or training for one. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I've got two boys, age 8 and 11. There's Bjorn and Bergie, although Bjorn only goes by Yo-Yo. We do a lot of adventure in our family. That's a huge priority to us. They summited their first big mountain. They summited Hauling Peak in Canmore a few weeks ago. I only took them out there just to see if they could get above the tree line. And once they got above the tree line, they were able to see the summit, and I couldn't stop them. They were
nice.
They had a lot of energy, and they do a lot of paddling, kayaking. Of course, I've got them both into swim, bike, run. They love it. They also do a lot of art. They're both extremely creative. These are things that's very important to us. I do spend a tremendous amount of time with my kids. If there's any reason why I have backed off work and I don't work more and I'm not more aggressively pursuing business, is because these years are so important, and I want to capture as much as I can.
Yeah. No, you're definitely one of the strongest family men that I know.
Well, that's probably the best compliment I could receive. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah. Now tell us also about your wife. You didn't.
My wife, Sigrid. She's amazing. Me and Sigrid have been together a lot of years. We've grown up together. Sigrid's been with me since I was 20 years old, and in that last 25 years, I've been several different Brads. I've been skateboarder, snowboarder Brad, getting out to the mountains 100 days a year and, snowshoeing up mountains and snowboarding down, taking avalanche safety courses, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. That Brad also partied a lot. He could, go out at 10 p.m. and come home at 10 a.m. 2 days later. And that Brad, he didn't have the healthiest of habits. It was a lot of indulgence, let's say. And she, although that wasn't her forte at the time, she was stuck with me through it all. And, then when I got really, started taking work really serious and really focused on that, and I was pretty much living at work, she was with me all through that. I can't say that period was great for us. It wasn't. We were living together. We were a couple. That was not the easiest period to be with somebody that's just consumed with work. Those years were an eye opener to me because I knew I loved Sigrid and I knew that she was an amazing person. I knew that if I wanted to spend my life with her, I couldn't be the way I was. I knew that wasn't going to work long term. And I also knew that if I was going to be with her, that we both wanted a family. And I knew that 70, 80 hours a week it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah. It sounds like you kind of go from one, if I can use the word, addiction to another throughout your life, where when you were younger, you had your party time and you had your skateboarding and your snowboarding, and that was your focus. And then it was work. And now you've kind of gone on to, I would say, a more balanced lifestyle where it's mainly focused on your family. And then you have like this job on the side where you do all your training. Like you still have a ton of, maybe even, I'll use the word again, addiction to the training part, because I know that's part of your everyday lifestyle.
Yeah.
Do you think that's fair to say, that you're kind of just moving those steps along?
Yes, for sure. I've been an obsessive personality my whole life, always. This current place I'm at right now in my life, I've managed to harness my obsessive personality in the most positive way that I can, so that I can have a wife and kids and be a normal functional human being, and not just totally obsessive. So the sport really brings me balance and helps me stay grounded, and it means the world to me. In fact, swim, bike, and run is just lifestyle to me now. I don't, even if I never ever did another Ironman or another ultra event of any sort, I mean, this is for as long as my body will allow me to. I just need this time. I need it as much for my mental health as for any sort of physical benefits. It's something I need. So yeah, it's fair to say that it's an addiction, although a lot more healthy than going to the bar and doing shooters.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to get at, is that you've actually taken that addictive personality and put it in such a positive way when you put it with your family, and you put it with this positive physical lifestyle that you've done. And yeah, you've really brought some really great balance to your life in that way. That's something that I'd really admire about how you live your life.
Well, thank you. It's something that I always am working on.
You were saying that it's part of your lifestyle and that you do that every day, whether you race or not, and that it helps you with your mental health as well. What is it that gets you to do the kind of mileage that you're doing now, though? You say you're kind of driven to do it, but is that come back again to that obsessive personality where you pick a number and you're like, I got to reach that number? Tell us about some of the numbers you did last year.
Yeah, numbers are very important to me. Not in the sense that a lot of athletes might have. Like I don't have a power meter on my bike. I don't care about the analytics as much as I do about, you kind of hit the nail on the head, because it is very random where I get my numbers from. I don't always know how I become so stuck on numbers. Coming into 2021, I'm sure you know that I did that big run the first week of January. There was a Badwater, they had a virtual race, and it was whoever could run the Badwater distances of their 3 events, which is 267 miles. And the challenge was whoever could run that with the fastest splits in the month of January. So I signed up for that before they announced the structure, like what the rules were. And originally when I signed up, I sort of thought it would just be a first out wins, which would have been perfect for me. Because that would have been a fun goal for me. And when they changed it to 267 miles, who could do it the fastest over 31 days? I mean, you could just run a mile, take a 10-minute break, run another mile. I think I could have, I think I could have made a good shot at putting forth a good time. I was really fit at the time. It just seemed so boring to me, that game. Like I didn't want to play that game. Mm-hmm. So I ended up just hammering out 267 miles. I was the only person in the event to do it in less than a week. And that sort of set me up for a really big running month in January. I ended up with I don't know, 650 kilometers of running. And I also managed 1,000 kilometers on the bike, which I've sort of said 1,000 kilometers on the bike is a bare minimum. No month should ever pass where I don't have 1,000 kilometers on a bike. And that could be a combination of indoor, outdoor. So now I've had 1,000 kilometers on the bike and a minimum of 400 kilometers a month running since December. And I can't stop with it. You know, like if it's the 29th of a 30-day month and I have 350 kilometers, I have to run 50 kilometers that day to get 400 because it's a number in my head. Yeah. Nobody else in this world cares. But I have a lot of fun with it. I love that. So right now in my life, it's Sunday today and I wear a Garmin. And so Garmin accumulates intensity minutes. Intensity minutes start being accumulated when your heart rate is elevated above 100 beats per minute. And it has to be elevated for a minimum of 10 minutes. So once you've had your heart rate above 100 beats a minute for 10 minutes, it will start accumulating intensity minutes. I've given myself the rule that I have to have 2,000 intensity minutes per week for every week of this year. And I'm still on track. This week was really challenging because I did some traveling and I had a lot of work to do and my training got really screwed up. So yesterday was Saturday and I was at 800 intensity minutes. I needed 1,200 intensity minutes in a weekend. So that's 600 a day, right? That's huge days. So I got 600 yesterday, beat the shit out of myself. And once I get off, finish this with you, Larry, it's going to be throw the bike shorts on and I'm going to ride my bike for, pretty much all day on the trainer because I need to get 600 more damn intensity minutes today. Once again, nobody in the world cares about this. It's purely something, even if I had 1,800, it's when I show up for Ironman Canada in September, those extra 200 intensity minutes aren't going to help me. In fact, they might hurt me. Yeah. I realize that, but it's fun. This is fun to me. This is the game, and I love doing it. So, yeah, that's my way. I guess I'm a bit weird with that stuff. But.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about some of the events that you've been in and some of the things that you've participated in. I know that you've done all the major marathons in the U.S., Boston, New York, Chicago. Is there one of those that is your favorite? Which one you enjoyed the most, or are they just another marathon in a different city?
Yeah, they're all so amazing. A lot of people sort of a lot of middle pack, slower runners. You can hear them complain about Boston, it's not fair. A lot of these things. I would say that although Boston has the prestige of being the Boston and that prestige because it's a qualify only event, New York and Chicago are just as good. To any person that might not be fast enough to qualify for a Boston spot, if you're just looking for the same type of experience, go and do Chicago or New York because they're so amazing. All three of those marathons are truly, to run through all 5 boroughs of New York City, yeah. They shut it down, and there's no experience like that. It's the best way to see New York City, to see Chicago. Chicago of the 3 marathons, by far had the most fans. Like there was over 1 million people cheering for me that day as I ran through the streets of Chicago. Some neighborhoods, it felt like I was running through an auditorium.
And they're all yelling Brad. That's a weird thing.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's funny because I ran Chicago with Goody, Ryan, my best friend. And we made running kits that matched our old hockey jerseys from when we played back in the day. So they were kind of like the old Minnesota Vikings, the green and yellow. Remember those from way back in the day? And so we ran the first half of the marathon together. And then Goody kicked my butt and started taking off. And so he was a few minutes ahead of me throughout most of that marathon. So as I was running, the crowds kept yelling at me, "You're catching him. You're catching him. He's just around the corner." So I always knew where Goody was.
That's a good one. And that gets me to the next thing. So all these experiences that you have and the way you learn to race, through running marathons and ultras, doing ultra swims, doing the Ironmans. You've done a double anvil as well. Do they prepare you enough to do the Ultraman experience? How does Ultraman change how you attack a race? Because we met in 2012 at Ultraman Canada. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that race for you and how it came to be that we got together on that race.
Sure. So yeah, 2012. I had, like I said earlier, I did my first Ironman in 2010, and then 2000, and then after that race, I went to the bench, which Ironman Canada is going to run past up the steep Vancouver Hill this summer. I was having breakfast at the bench. It's my favorite place to go post any race and pig out on. They've got great salmon bennies. The guy in front of me had a T-shirt on. I had just finished my first Ironman, and I thought I was like the coolest shit ever. And this guy in front of me, this old guy, gray hair, he had a T-shirt on, Ultraman Canada, swim 10K, bike 421, run 84. And I'm looking at this guy's shirt and I'm thinking, what a jerk. Who does this guy think he is? Like,
poser.
Yeah, well, why don't you just swim 1,000 and bike 1,000,000 and run 500,000? I don't know, like just pick numbers, you know? But of course, I went home and Googled it and sent the application in. And honestly, I didn't really think I was going to get accepted, right? So I don't know, a month later when I got this invite email, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I have to do this. I had asked my sister to crew for me, and her and her boyfriend, my sister was young. She was maybe 20, 21 years old. And I really didn't know what crewing meant at this point in time. I really thought it was an unnecessary evil of Ultraman. It kind of annoyed me that I had to bring this vehicle around the course with me. I just thought, like, I train so much and I'm fine. Like, I'm sure Sigrid could just drive out there and pass me a bottle every 100 kilometers and it'll be good, right? And thankfully, it didn't work out for my sister and her boyfriend to show up. A few weeks out, they canceled on me, and I thought my race was over. Without a crew, they won't let you race. So I contacted the race director at that time, who was involved with Ultraman, and he was able to pair me up with Lucy and Larry Ryan, who at the time were married, and Lucy had done Ultraman, I believe, 2011?
2010, something, yeah.
And you had crewed for her. So you had some experience crewing. And I believe both of you were just coming back from California, where Lucy had just finished running Badwater for the first time successfully. And so I met Lucy and Larry, I think probably on the Tuesday or the Wednesday before my Ultraman. They volunteered to crew for me. And we had rented a house in Penticton. We all stayed together. And I would say we all hit it off right from the get-go. It wasn't tough. After going through that weekend with Lucy and Larry, it was really a good thing that my sister and her boyfriend weren't able to make it, and that I did have them as a crew. Their knowledge. I mean, I didn't know that I had to send somebody at 5 a.m.
You don't have to talk about me in the third person. I'm right here with you.
Sure. Well, you were awesome. You know, I mean, just like little things like, there's nothing really in between Princeton and Summerland. So Larry knew to go get ice. He knew to go get gas in the morning. Like all of these things that for me as an athlete, there's no way I would have been able to give direction to a crew that didn't know. So I was really lucky being an inexperienced athlete, having a very experienced crew. Because it would have been a much different race for me. My race was flawless. I had no problems. My first day was very smooth. Larry was out in the kayak with me. I got sick. Larry was calm. He was patient. There was no problems. On day 2, I mean, it was really fun. I had a ton of fun on day 2. On day 3, I really struggled. I ran a very fast first marathon. I felt great. It was almost too easy, I would say, the first half of day 3. And Lucy and Larry kept gently warning me in the first half, like, hey, you're going pretty hard. You might want to slow down. And they definitely were better at providing nutrition for me than I was for myself, because I wasn't thinking of any of that. I wasn't thinking how long the day was. I was just thinking, I'm 15 kilometers in. I feel great. And every time Lucy would run up to me and give me grapes or a bottle, and I'd say, no, I'm good. Eat 3 grapes. Take 2 swigs of the bottle. Like, she would just force something on me. So it was really a lot of fun. That got me sucked in. What was supposed to be a one and done really, really did become important to me. That whole, we meet as strangers, we compete as friends, we leave as family. After that weekend, I got it. I went from being full of bravado and ego and really just looking at the sport as more of an individual, like what can I do? What's in this for me? And now I was just looking at this like, what a cool community, this was so fun. Like, that was so awesome. Like, I had so much fun with the crew. Like, that was like being part of a team out there. Like, growing up playing team sports, playing hockey, that felt no different to me, and my wife, who was supportive of Ultraman, she fell in love with it as well. She was out on course, not with the crew vehicle, in her own vehicle, and she loved it, especially the run, because it's way more spectator friendly. My wife does, in an Ironman, you're competing with 2,000 athletes, family, and friends. So there's tens of thousands of people all over course that you're competing with. At an Ultraman, you're not competing with all of that. And the people that you are going around the course with, you're not competing with them. They're part of your ohana. They're part of your family. So everybody's out to help each other. If you're on the side of the road at the top of a climb trying to see your athlete on a bike, somebody else is there. They're not getting in your way. They're not, it's way more friendly. And, so she loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the same thing that happened with me. Obviously, Lucy was the one who was competing in all these events, and I would come along and crew, but I too, like, just fell in love with this ohana as well. And for 10 years, her and I went back to that race, whether she was racing or not, to make sure that we were crewing and meeting people like you. And this is where it's taken us now. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know Brad so far, but we need to take a quick break and bring in another of our friends.
And now, here's another Steve King story.
The gentleman I'm going to introduce next to you is someone I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. He is a 5-time Race Across America finisher, finishing as high as 4th place in 1992. He's also a 3-time finisher of the Furnace Creek 508, finishing as high as 2nd place in 1991. He's run around 50 marathons, was also a race walker up to the 50-kilometer distance. He's done the cross-continental USA cycling in under 9 days. He was one of the earliest finishers of an Ultraman distance as well, taking part in one in Europe in the early days. But he was to the Big Island on 3 occasions as an athlete. In 1998, he was 8th. 1999, 15th, and he was there for that horrendous year in 2000 when the swim certainly provided lots of difficulties for the athletes and many were not able to finish. However, he gladly stayed in the water and finished in 6 hours, 53 minutes. He came to Ultraman Canada in Penticton in 1999 and finished 3rd overall there to the Australian Nick Mallett and the Brazilian Sergio Cordeiro. He finished the Paris-Brest-Paris, the 1,200-kilometer bike ride. He's held world record for 24 hours in a road time trial and was the American record holder for 100 kilometers on the track as a time trialist as well. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with MS in 2002, but became a public speaker for the MS Lifeline Ambassadors. Since then, he's become a very renowned sports photographer, having covered well over 250 plus events. He's been in magazine covers, or his photos have at least, and he's been to many races, including many Ironman races, major city marathons, and to Ultramans, of course, the races in the UK, the race in Canada, and on the Big Island. Now, he also ended up being a race director on 2 occasions for an Ultraman distance race in Texas, where 2 of our superstars, Andrew Gale and Ingrid Hillhouse, both won on both occasions. He's a great music fan as well, and was in fact the official photographer for Jack Bruce of Cream, the great bass guitarist, and he lives in the music city of Austin, Texas. I'm referring, of course, to the great Mr. Rick Kent.
Did you know that I do extensive show notes for each episode? I provide links to all of the events and people that are mentioned during the show so that you can learn even more about them. I have to say, it's amazing how many shout-outs Steve can include in one Steve King story. If you want to check them out from any episode, just go to the podcast website, which is linked in the description and also available from our Facebook page. All right, let's get back to talking to Brad and hear about some more of the people he has met through Ultraman and the adventures that has led to. The next time you raced, was that, what year was that?
2012. I then did inaugural Ultraman Florida. Well, I mean, I did some Ironman and like half and stuff in between. But like as far as ultra distance goes, I did the inaugural Florida in 2014.
Yeah.
And that was super fun. That was Consuela and Trung, Lively. They put on a great event that year. It was really cool. I really wasn't too familiar with, I'd been to Miami before, but I had never been to Orlando before or Cocoa Beach, Central Florida. It was a lot of fun. I never rode the course in advance. So every turn that I went around was a new road for me, was new scenery. I know that most athletes need to see the course before they do it. But I was really glad I did the course blind that one time. I mean, it was a neat way to see a really pretty state like Florida.
Mm. And then I think your next one was probably the 520 event.
Ultra 520K Canada, yes.
Yeah. When Ultraman left for that brief time for a few years. And we were there together again at that race because I was crewing there as well at that one. But before that race, you were involved in another big event that year. So can you just tell us a little bit about this event? Now this time you're using your Ohana not as the athlete, you've gone in as the crew now. So you're doing that full circle thing where sometimes you're the athlete, sometimes you're the crew, and you get involved with this ultra swim. So tell us about that event, please.
Sure. Well, this actually ties into Florida because I met Adam at Ultraman Florida. We really hit it off on the run. We started running together and we ran the first marathon together, and it was just nonstop talk. It was really a great way to burn 40 kilometers. So I had thrown out to him, we were talking about other adventures. And I said, I grew up on Lake Winnipeg in Canada. It's from the point where I grew up in Gimli, Manitoba, across the lake is around 30 kilometers. I would love to swim it someday. So not too long after that, Adam called me up and said, so this swim you were talking about, let's do it. When are we doing it? And I said, oh, okay. So we put that all together. And in 2015, I took the year off, formal racing, and me and Adam swam 30 kilometers across Lake Winnipeg. For me, it was a real struggle. I really was a burden on Adam through that swim. He would have been finished hours earlier had it not been for me. But he was great. He was really good, supportive of me across the swim. And I can remember when we got to the other side, after swimming all day, hours and hours, my neck was trashed. I had really bad chafing. It was extreme, and I was in a lot of pain. I spent most of my day crying, and I really wanted to quit, and I couldn't because it was my hometown, and I just really felt that, unless I go unconscious, I'm not going to stop moving my arms and swimming. And of course, when I got to shore, my kids ran out into the water and gave me hugs, and my wife and my dad. And it was really a special thing. I had like Sunday school teachers and that showed up on the beach, and people I hadn't seen in 20 years. And that's the cool thing about growing up in a small town. When I finally made my way to Adam at the end of our swim, we gave each other a big hug, and he just looked so fresh. That 30 kilometer swim across that lake hardly fazed that guy. And he smiled. And in the coolest way, he said to me, I think I could swim back. And he wasn't being cocky, and he wasn't being arrogant. He was just, I think that he gained his confidence. I think that swim is where an amazing athlete, something clicked, and he gained confidence. And I feel pretty fortunate that I was there at that moment when this guy, when it clicked, And so we had left a 5-day window open to swim across Lake Winnipeg. And because we had, boats lined up and kayaks and paramedic that came out there with us. And so we had this 5-day window open, and it turned out that we were able to hit the swim on the first day. So after that, we had 4 more days with nothing planned. And for personalities like me and Adam, throwing 4 days at us where you can't really do anything because you're kind of sore from the swim and you're in a small town. And anyway, it was really tough for us those 4 days. We were going a bit stir crazy. We spent most of our time sitting around, drinking tea and eating fruit and talking about future adventures. One of the future adventures was actually an idea that Elmar Heger, Jen Soost's boyfriend,
Right.
He had mentioned to me that he was thinking of swimming Okanagan Lake north to south. And that was an idea. I mean, he mentioned that to me years ago. And so that was sort of something in my head.
And can you just, for the people that are listening, what distance are we talking for north to south?
We are talking well over 100 kilometers of swimming in a massive, deep lake where conditions change quickly. So yeah, you're looking at probably around 70 miles. I would say 115, 100.
I think 105 is what
was that his total?
Was. Yeah.
Okay, so 65 miles, 105 kilometers. And so Adam called me up just before Christmas after our 2015 swim. So just approaching 2016. And he said, here's the plan. I think this summer I should swim Okanagan Lake and you crew for me. And then after that, you do Ultra 520 and I'll crew for you. Or Ultraman. I can't remember what it was at the time.
520.
It was Ultra 520. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And, it's funny when I look back at stuff like that, how casual I took that and Adam took it. Like, it's a pretty big thing. But we just didn't consider it. It was no different than calling you up and saying, hey, Larry, you want to, go play some pool and grab a beer? Yeah, man, let's do it. It was just so casual, and it might have been like a 5 or 10 minute conversation, but the plan was laid. And originally it was just going to be very small. And Adam turned it into something much better and much cooler, though.
He had a real purpose behind doing that as well.
Purpose. Yeah. And that was really special. He did it. He raised funds and awareness for Parkinson's for his Auntie Susan. And she was able to make it out. And she was on one of the boats throughout the swim. She was able to witness him do it. And she actually got out and swam with him for a few kilometers, which I'm sure is a memory that they'll both cherish forever. It was pretty special to see the whole thing. And I mean, it was a really, the swim took over 40 hours. He didn't stop swimming. He did not get out of the water one time, the whole time. He swam through the night. At a certain point, he lost the use of his right arm. He couldn't move his right arm anymore. He created this technique of swimming, which worked. And he was probably swimming as fast with his left arm as I swim with both. It became really challenging towards the end. We went around the little bend in the lake around Summerland, and there's an island there. It's called Rattlesnake Island. Yeah. And we went through the little channel between the island and the east side of the lake. And at that point is when Adam really, I think, lost the movement of his arm. And so pretty much from Rattlesnake Island right into Penticton, he was swimming with one arm. At that point in time, I really think Adam was also starting to hallucinate a little. Like, I think his, like something, obviously like when you're exerting yourself that hard and like your body's out of whack. So I think Adam was having a tough time with things. He was starting to see things that weren't there. So it was quite funny because once we became visible, because we had a big entourage, we had a houseboat, a pontoon boat, a bunch of kayaks, and everything was well lit because we had to swim through darkness and stuff. And so Steve King, legendary announcer, he came out and he pulled up his van with a PA system onto the beach by the SS Sycamoose in Penticton. I can't remember exactly what time he got out there, but it was early afternoon. I would probably say 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And we could hear Steve out on the lake. I could hear his PA. And of course, they could see us, but we weren't moving fast. Yeah. And of course, Adam was hallucinating and he kept swimming like we had 2 kayaks in front of him and he had to follow the kayaks, but he kept fighting the route we were taking him because he decided that he was swimming someplace else. In his head, with his hallucinations, he was taking different paths than the right path. So it was really funny because Steve King had my phone number, and Steve King, for the last 4 or 5 hours, as we're slowly approaching, Okanagan Beach, kept calling me and he'd say, "Hey, Brad, how are you guys doing? How's Adam feeling?" And, I'd give him a little bit of a feedback. And Steve would so politely just say, give me some tips. And he would say, "Hey, Brad, if you could just keep Adam swimming straight, you got to keep him swimming straight because he keeps veering to the left and he's going the wrong way." And I'd say, "Yeah, Steve, we are trying our hardest, but like it was virtually impossible." So I really appreciated that Steve was adding just an element of fun to what was, it was a little bit stressful at that. We had all been on the boats at that point in time, I think I had been on the boat for, over 48 hours. So just hearing Steve, I couldn't really get into it at the time with Steve and say, "Hey, this guy's hallucinating. I think he's in cartoon characters and I think he thinks that mountain's on fire." And, but Steve was out there until, I think we showed up on shore probably close to 10:30, 11 p.m. at night.
It was definitely dark. I've watched some video from it recently.
Yeah. And Steve was there the whole time. I don't think Steve probably got home till well after midnight.
Yeah.
And, for us, after everything we had been through, Steve made that finish because there was hundreds of people there, but they weren't there for any. They didn't
throughout
know.
the day, he was just drawing them in because when people hear Steve King announcing something, they're going to come over and see what he's announcing.
Exactly. So this was spontaneous on Steve King's part. We didn't plan it with him. He just knew that it was happening. And this is when you talk about Ohana, there's just so many cool Ohana stories like this, where a guy like Steve is just coming out on his own to show support to his friends, to other athletes. And that just meant the world to every single one of us out there. Otherwise, without Steve King, we were just showing up to a beach at night and nobody cared.
In the dark, yeah. I'll put the video clips in the show notes for this show because there are a couple video clips of him arriving, and you can hear Steve King in the background of these that I've watched recently, and you can tell there's some excitement there. There was a documentary made with the swim as well, a documentary film, and I'll put a link out for that as well. It's Victory Swim 105.
That's right.
And it's a really good story, and I think people would be excited to watch and see what it meant for Adam to do that for his aunt and to raise those funds for Parkinson and the whole story behind the idea of how exercise is helping those people that are suffering from that disease as well.
It's a great story.
Yeah. So one of the things about the Ohana and meeting these people that you meet at all these Ultraman races is they do these other crazy ultra events as well, like Adam did with these ultra swims. I'm going to play you a clip of another person that we met through Ultraman that you have a relationship with, and I just want you to listen to this and then comment on it.
All right, this is bold. From August 4th, 35-year-old Andre Kajlich became the first ever amputee to finish an Ultraman when he completed Ultraman Canada 2014. 3-day event starts with a 10-kilometer swim on day 1, followed by 420.2-kilometer bike ride split over days 1 and 2. It concludes with an 84.3-kilometer run on day 3. He completed the entire run portion, equivalent to the length of a double marathon. Using his regular wheelchair, he says his racing wheelchair would have given him an unfair advantage. Final time, 28 hours, 4 minutes, 23 seconds. Good enough for 8th place overall. That's good.
Obviously, that's an amazing athlete that we met through our Ultraman family. That was the 2014 edition of Ultraman Canada. That was from a sports center in the U.S. They did that little clip on Andre. We were both at that event as well. I think you were crewing at that event, were you? For someone?
Working? Was that the year I ran with Rick?
Oh, that might be, yeah. The year you ran with Rick in your underwear. You were just working as a volunteer at the event.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we met Andre. So Now you've had first of all, tell the listener about Andre at Ultraman, and then we can go into how that extended out in your family with him.
He was just very impressive. I mean, the way he approached the course. I mean, just in that little bit that you played, when he mentioned that Andre didn't use his racing wheelchair, that would have been an unfair advantage. So, which is only something that Andre determined. Nobody else there determined that that was an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Most people there would have thought that whatever Andre did that day was not an unfair advantage.
Just for the people that know the course, or maybe don't even know the course yet, that is not an easy run course with all the gravel and the as much of it as it is, the steepness of it, obviously at points. Like he, for him to say that it would give him an unfair advantage it says a lot about who he is as an athlete as well.
Yeah. There's no flat sections on that course. You know, there was that cool moment where Nick Mallett, I think, was slightly ahead of Andre going up a climb. And he was I think Nick was really giving it on the bike, and he knew Andre was behind him. And that was the point where I think Nick knew he was getting past. And I think he was so impressed with Andre at that point in time that Nick just stopped his bike, waited at the summit of the climb. And I can't remember if he cheered for Andre as he passed, or if he stopped and shook his hand and said, like, this is amazing. Like, it wasn't, I mean, Andre's a tremendous swimmer. He's a tremendous, cyclist. And, he does all three disciplines very well in sport. But it wasn't that. It wasn't how fast he was, or, it was his personality. It was his nature, the way that he was, that made everybody there fall in love with him.
Yeah, he's an amazing athlete. And I don't think anybody that went to that race didn't get drawn to him for his personality, like you said. Like everybody thought, oh, it's amazing a para-athlete's going to do Ultraman, and that is amazing. But he's such an amazing athlete that it doesn't matter that he's a para-athlete. He killed that course, and his personality, like you said, drew everybody in because he's so friendly and so nice. Obviously, that had an effect on you because later on you've had another experience with him. So tell us about how you hooked up with him again later on and did another crazy ultra event.
We did hit it off at that Ultraman, and we kept in touch and became friends after. And when I did race, you mentioned that double anvil in Oregon. I did go out and see him then. And Andre had been talking about RAM for quite a while. And I was down crewing for a different athlete in Borrego Springs, California, when Andre was there trying to qualify for RAM. So that was the 12 and 24 hour time trial championships. And Andre had mechanical issues, and due to the mechanical issues, he didn't make the distance, which I believe was 400 kilometer minimum or something for the RAM qualification that year. I've got to say that one of the most impressive things about Andre that I take away is just his sheer determination. The amount of effort and work and training that goes into him just to try to qualify to get into RAM is astronomical.
For people that don't maybe know all the ins and outs of RAM, can you just tell us a little bit how it worked as a crew? What's going on behind the scenes for RAM?
So every athlete is going to approach it a bit different, but pretty much you're crossing America from Oceanside, California at the Pacific to Annapolis, Maryland at the Atlantic. It's over 3,000 miles, which is over 5,000 kilometers. And there's checkpoints along the way. So obviously you have to take that specific path. And there's a lot of rules involved, but you're really on your own, a lot of that way. So we had a Sprinter van, which was with Andre 24/7. There would never be a time when that Sprinter van wasn't with Andre. And then we had a big RV that was always a couple 100 kilometers away from us, never directly with us. And then we had another crew with a minivan. So my shift was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. When I was with Andre. So day shift, it was fun because you got to see America. Or we left Oceanside, California with Andre. We drove for 12 hours that first day. So till 7 p.m. At 7 p.m., they have, you must follow your athlete from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's mandatory for the race. If the event sees an athlete on course past 7 p.m. without a support vehicle following them, that's disqualification. So we would always
which by the way, we should point out is the exact opposite of an Ultraman race. You are not allowed to follow your athlete.
Right. But we also don't race through the night.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would make that switch. We would usually call each other. And we also had, there's live tracking on the race. So you could go to the live tracker, see where Andre is for the 7 p.m. people. They would then, position themselves to be at the right spot so they know when we're going to show up. So we would always make those tag offs, and they were quite challenging because when it's like 6:45 p.m., they show up, we pull over to the side of the road, Andre keeps going. We have to pull all of our day coolers out, all of the drinks, all of the food, all of the dirty laundry. We have to shove it all out super quick. So our day team is doing all of that while the night team is loading everything up. And then you've got the captain from day and night talking about Andre and going over notes and how everything's going, talking about his nutrition. It really was a very high energy thing. It was everybody had to be firing on all cylinders in order for this to happen properly. Nobody could be delegating, or you just had to know what had to be done and do it. And it really was seamless. So at that point in time, it's now 7 p.m. and we're done for the day. So our option was, what do you do now? Do you just go to the closest hotel and sleep there for the night, knowing that over the night, Andre's going to move 200 kilometers, possibly more? Our choice was always to drive that night, to put those few hundred kilometers in that night. Mm-hmm. So typically, from 7 p.m. till 9, 10 p.m., we would be driving far enough up the RAM route so that when we woke up in the morning, we'd be within kilometers of Andre, hopefully, if all went well. And that's how it usually played out. So yeah, we'd usually get up at 7, and make our, have a little breakfast and make our way back out on the road so that we could, tag off with that night crew sometime around 6:30, 6:45, and once again, swap out all the coolers and all the dirty laundry and load it all up and spend the day with Andre again. On the very last day, we ended up going with Andre longer. So we ended up going from our 7 a.m. crew all the way until Andre got to Annapolis. We really were in a good spot that last day as the day was going on. And it was really challenging getting through West Virginia. I had no idea how much mountains there are in that state. And so Andre, that last day, just mentally for Andre was really challenging. And he asked us if we would ride him into Annapolis. So I think we went from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on that last day. And it was funny. I did get to spend the night with Andre. I do remember sometime in the middle of the night, he was having a nature break on the side of the road, and I was standing near him. And he asked me if I could see his name in his pee on the concrete on the road. He's like, look, it spelled my name out. And I'm looking at this pee puddle on the side of the road, and I don't see his name written in it. And I'm thinking okay, sure, Andre, that's pretty cool,
So let's take that to the next step then. And obviously we've had those experiences, and that's how we've come to now be the co-race directors of Ultraman Canada. I came in a little bit later because you were instigating the reintroduction of Ultraman to Penticton. Can you tell the listener, because I think people know by now that there are 2 races that happen in Penticton that are 5:15 distance, 2 weekends apart. And can you just tell a little bit of the background as to how you came to be the race director of Ultraman Canada and what happened that there are now these 2 races, just for clarification?
Yeah, of course. So I mentioned that I did Ultra 520K in 2016. That was the year that Adam did his Okanagan Lake swim. That January, so that would be January of 2017, Ultra 520K put out an announcement on their social media in January of 2017. And that announcement was that they would cease to exist after their 2018 event. So they would still host the summer of 2017 and the 2018 event. And even that was really upsetting to me. I knew that the organizers of the Ultra 520 event had made the choice to not be part of the Ultraman brand anymore. So they weren't part of that franchise. But I was still very happy that the ultra distance race existed in Canada and in the area. And so there was no need to look for a replacement as long as an ultra race existed and it was a good event. But once they announced that it was ending, then I just thought, that's really tragic. That's really sad. That's for us athletes and for the region. Penticton is such a triathlon rich area. That's the history here. It's amazing. And it's just so perfect for racing in the summer. And as an area to bring international athletes where there's nothing but recreational activities, mountains, lakes, wineries, vineyards, like there's no end to what you could do if you want to bring your family here, race for a week and then spend a week exploring. It really is an amazing place. So
that's so amazing that you actually moved your family to Penticton from Calgary.
I do. I love it here. And this is my happy place in the world for sure. And so that morning over breakfast, I was talking to Sigrid, my wife, about it. And I said, Sigrid, what could we do? Is there anything we can do like to try and keep a race going? So we were having the conversation where, let's, what do we do? Do we start a new race and do we call it Ultra Canada or do we call and so we didn't really know. I mean, that's not being race directors and owning a race. It wasn't an ambition of ours. Like we were really, just a young couple looking at starting a family. I had my fingers in a couple different businesses at the time. I was looking for more free time, I wasn't looking to take more on. I was looking to take less on, was sort of what the position I was in at that time. So yeah, my phone rang while I was talking to Sigrid about, let's keep this race going. And it was Micheal Brown, who I raced with at Ultraman Canada in 2012. Micheal Brown is a former professional rugby player. He played in the UK. And so he's got a background of being an athlete. I think when his professional career ended, I think he put some events on in Canada for rugby. I don't know a lot about that sport, but I do know that that's, I think, where Michael's event promotions started. And after that, he bought the Great White North 70.3, which is the oldest half Iron distance race in Canada. And he did a tremendous job with that race. I knew that he had the contract to put on the ITU World Championships in 2018. He had his fingers in a lot of things. He had the contract for Challenge Penticton, I think for 3 out of the 5 years that it operated in Penticton. And so Micheal was already set up with a lot of the equipment, the logistics, the connections to make this happen. And so he called me up. I was actually a little bit surprised because I didn't know maybe what he needed Brad for. But maybe it's just part of the Ohana. I do think that Micheal saw the same email that I saw, that ultra racing was going to be coming to an end in Penticton. And I think that he just really felt the same way I did, that we need to keep this going. So we spoke for a few minutes that morning, and we basically came to the conclusion that we were going to keep this race going. Now, Micheal had just been through the community of Penticton made the decision in 2015, after the 25th year anniversary, to not continue the contract with Ironman. They made the decision to try out a different brand, and they tried Challenge. Mm-hmm. The first 2 years, it was run by, I believe, the city. And then the city put up the race to tender. And I could be wrong with some of my details, and then I believe Micheal Brown got that final 3 years. So I was dealing with Micheal as he had been dealing with trying to rebrand a race. And he was very frustrated. He was very frustrated at how North America wasn't interested in a new brand. Mm-hmm. He was really just under the impression that people want Ironman. That's what they want. Like, he's like, Challenge is a great race. Like, I mean, it's just, I could give them the exact same course, but people want Ironman. Like, so
not M-Dot.
Exactly. So he sort of felt that, I think he felt a little bit defeated in that regard. So when I was saying we need to keep this race going, he just said, look, he's like, Ultraman is the way to go. We're not approaching this for any reason other than to give people what they want. And we really felt that people want Ultraman. That was the message we were getting. And, you know, I've had a great relationship with Jane and Sheryl and Dave. And, you know, I thought it'd be tons of fun to work with them all, and also to have that support and credibility to be aligned with an organization like that. So we had discussed how do we announce this? Like, we wanted to show respect to the current event, Ultra 520K Canada, and really let that event play out without any interference from what we're doing. So we came to the decision that Micheal Brown was hosting the ITU Worlds in Penticton just a few weeks after the final Ultra 520K in 2018. We thought that the Worlds would be a tremendous venue for us to announce our event, that Ultraman Canada would continue in 2019 and beyond. It was coming back to Penticton. Unfortunately, at the final Ultra 520K Canada, last weekend of July in 2018, I guess they made the decision to keep the event going. I think it was possibly due to the demand. They sold out the last year of the race, which doesn't surprise me. I think many people were looking at, this is my last chance to kick the can, mm-hmm. and I want to get out there and kick it. I think it would be common maybe to have a spike, in my opinion, if you announce the final year of an event that's been happening for nearly 30 years. I think that any athletes that had contemplated it, or you're going to bring them out of the woodwork. And my suspicion is that's maybe what happened in 2018.
And so 2019 rolls around, you're a month out from doing the event, and Larry Ryan is out on an epic road trip, driving up to Tuktoyaktuk and from Vancouver. And then on the way home, I just call up Brad because it's like, oh, we're going to be passing through Penticton. Thought I'd drop in, see what's going on. And by the way, look up Tuktoyaktuk and see just how far that is from Vancouver. It was a great trip. So I call you up and we come over and we're hanging out, and you're like, yeah, the race is going in a month, and we got a lot of work to do still. What happened at that point in the story? So I'll give a little bit of details, and I'm going to be a little bit vague on a few things just out of respect for my partner at the time, because I don't know all the details, so I don't want to say too much. But Micheal Brown was my partner at the time going into 2019 event, and Micheal, like I said, he put on other events in Penticton, and one of them was the Challenge event. And I do know that there was some hard feelings between the bureaucracy of the city of Penticton and Micheal Brown's business with Challenge, and there was conflict. And, you know, I think that litigation was being discussed, and there was a whole can of worms that I had nothing to do with, but it created hard feelings for my partner and Penticton. So unfortunately, that really took a lot of the wind out of the sails for my partner coming to the, and being part of this event. So he was really a lot of the brains of all of this. You know, I was sort of, I don't know, I was kind of a cheerleader up until that point. You know, I was doing a lot of social media stuff, like, you know, just, hey, come out and do this race, and he was, pulling permits and organizing, to make sure that we had a finish line and generators and medals and finisher shirts. That was kind of the roles. And so he still offered support. But all of a sudden I ended up
more in the driver's seat as opposed to the passenger seat. And I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know that I was going to be taking on as much as I was. There was a lot of surprises. And when you showed up, it was kind of that month before the race. It was probably 2 years ago to the day almost. You could probably see the fear in my eyes. I think it was just the realization was setting in that, like, I have no idea what's going on here. I'm in over my head. I really felt it. And so I think you spent the night at my place that night, and we hung out and drank a few beers. And then did you leave? You went back to Vancouver the next day? Yeah. And then I think you called me up like a week later or something. And Larry just said, "Hey man, do you need some help?" And I didn't shy away from saying, "Yes, I need help." And thank goodness I did. Larry's vision for logistics, for knowing how to get athletes around the course safely and, in a good way, his vision for making a finish line out of nothing, and, for elevating the event way beyond what it would have been without him there. I was disappointed with how things were turning out, but Larry came and elevated it to a place where I could be proud of, where I could walk away from it feeling good about it. So me and Larry had talked throughout the week about possibly a partnership and moving forward together. But we didn't necessarily know what that looked like, or if we would even be given the opportunity 4 more years to make that happen from the board. Luckily, when we all met after, they did present us with the opportunity to put on more years. So in 2019, we signed a 5-year contract with me and Larry as co-race directors. And unfortunately, we lost last year, but we've got this year back on, and 3 more great years after this. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And this year we are going to be smaller because of the fact that international athletes are not going to be able to travel to Canada. At least at this time, we don't know they're going to be able to travel to Canada, and that's too close to the race. So we made it all Canadian. We have had a few people drop that we were expecting to come as well. So we're going to be going back to the roots. We're going to go small. We're going to make it intimate. But for those people that have trained for 2 or 3 years now to be in this race, we are putting on the race for those people, and we're going to make sure that they get their opportunity to go to Kona this year. If they can apply and get in, like, they're going to have their finish. And for us, it's going to be a very intimate race this year, I think. And I'm really excited about that part of it. In the next episode, we will get together with Steve King, now that we've introduced you to the podcast family, and we'll do a little race preview. We'll talk about the people that are racing. We'll talk about how we're going to move forward and what the plans are around the race for this year. And that will wrap up kind of the season of the podcast. And then as we introduce, and then the following podcast, we'll have an episode where we kind of talk about what happened at the race, and that'll be the start of season 2. Because as season 2 moves on, we'll now start introducing the athletes for 2022. And in 2022, we have a great field already in place. We have all these people that rolled over. We had a number of people that were already signed up. And it's going to be a full race, sold out, and we're going to have an amazing 2022. So that's kind of the way moving forward. And Brad, I want to thank you for giving me so much of your time today and telling us all of these great Ohana stories that you have. I'm sure the people get to know how you are now as a family man, as a racer, and some of these cool experiences that you've had, and maybe they can come out and meet people like you have and develop friendships like you and I have through doing these races. And I really appreciate the fact that you've taken this time to sit down and talk to me and share it with the podcast listeners.
Well, thanks for having me here, Larry. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I definitely do want to say that Ohana is real. We do meet as strangers, compete as friends, and leave as family. It's true.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview, and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultraman podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises, brought to you by Ultraman Canada. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.